Welcome to Travel Secrets with me, Tanya Rose, the podcast sharing wisdom for fellow travellers. Each week, I ask my guests to reveal their 6 travel secrets and the trips and holidays that uncover them. Today, my guest is the legendary playwright, screenwriter, translator, and film director, Christopher Hampton. Your glittering career has helped you win 2 Oscars, 2 BAFTAs, and 2 Tonys. You're famously known for Les Liaisons Dangereuses, Carrington, Atonement, The Father and the Son. And you're also responsible for the book and co-writing the lyrics for my very favourite musical, Sunset Boulevard, which has won amazing new awards in its reincarnation. It's just fantastic.
Yes, that was a huge bonus for us last year that Jamie Lloyd came along and reimagined the whole show. And we're about to open it on Broadway.
It was so clever, and I absolutely loved the way that the guy walked through the back of the Savoy, and then you did that at the Olivier Awards as well. It was just amazing. I sat next to Don Black 2 nights ago, actually, at the Colbert, and we had a real chat about it. He's so excited about Broadway too. So congratulations.
Thank you.
More Tonys on the way, hopefully.
Uh-huh.
So you grew up in the Azores.
Well, I was born in the Azores. I left, my parents left when I was about 18 months old, so I don't remember it. And in fact, I went back with most of my surviving family for my 70th birthday because I hadn't been there since I was an infant. I mean, that was a really interesting trip.
I mean, it's amazing. When I did my research on you, you lived in so many places before you were 10 years old, and you had to leave during the Suez Canal.
That's right.
Crisis.
Well, the first place I really remember. Well, look, we were in Adan for a while, which was pretty much like the moon, only very hot. And not very attractive in what's now the Yemen. And then my father managed to persuade them to send him to Alexandria in Egypt, which we all loved. And I was there for about 5 years until, as you say, the Suez Crisis. It kicked everybody out of Egypt.
And you also lived in Zanzibar and in Hong Kong. I mean, your very young age was obviously full of adventure.
Well, that's right. It was just my father worked for a company called Cable and Wireless, and it was like being in the army. They posted you wherever they felt like. His last 2 postings were Hong Kong, which we also loved, and then Zanzibar, which is extremely exotic and enjoyable until they had a revolution.
Were you there during that as well?
No, my parents and my brother were there, and the island was incommunicado for 10 days or so, which was pretty scary. And you kept reading about, bodies in the street and so on.
And you couldn't get in touch with them?
No, but being as I was about 17, I suppose it didn't really hit me as hard.
You were probably out having a good time thinking, I'm sure I'll be in touch in the next few days. So before we go into your travel secrets, Christopher, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how travel has impacted the person that you've become.
Well, I've always loved, a childhood where you're traveling all over the world impacts people in 2 completely opposite ways. Some people never want to travel again, but I belong to the other faction. I got the bug, and so I always loved travel, and I guess I've seen quite a lot of the world, and I don't enjoy it quite as much now as I used to, but I always used to travel whenever I got an opportunity.
And for work as well as pleasure?
Yes, well, I've had films made in Australia and Vietnam and Malaysia and so on. So you get the opportunity to travel with work as well, which is great.
So let's start on your travel secrets. What's the number 1 destination that you think everyone should go to once in their lifetime?
Well, I'm going to say Machu Picchu.
Oh, wow.
In Peru, which is the lost city of the Incas, really. Shortly after I got married, my wife and I went and toured around South America for about 6 months, and we wound up in Peru. This was 50 years ago. So everything was very different then from the way it is now, I imagine, because you had to go to Cuzco, the city of Cuzco, and take a train. And you'd get there, the train would arrive at 11 o'clock, and then you'd have, I think, 5 hours, and then you'd have to get on the train to go back to Cuzco. But if you were smart, you could book one of the 19 rooms at the only hotel there.
That's the Orient Express Hotel, isn't it? I think it's the Monasterio or something.
Yes, well, no. This was
that was before.
This was just a straight up and down kind of plain traveller's hotel, nothing special at all. And it was the only hotel there.
Really?
So what happened was that when the train went away at 4:00, you had the whole place to yourself. And it was absolutely magical.
amazing.
First of all, it's extremely beautiful. It was sort of couched in between all these mountains and above this sort of roaring river below. And that's why it wasn't discovered until, I think, 1901 or something by an American explorer. And then it's in a very good state of preservation. And it's, it's full of ghosts and a really absolutely unforgettable place. And we got up at dawn the next day, and we were literally the only people in the whole.
How wonderful!
This whole little tiny town, and I've never forgotten it. I think now it's much more organised and surrounded by big hotels, and perhaps that particular kind of experience isn't available. But
Did you suffer from altitude sickness?
yeah, we luckily went to Cusco a day early, because the first day you have this frightful sort of thin headache.
Really acclimatised.
And then you have to drink a lot of mate.
Oh, what's mate?
Well, it's a kind of Argentinian tea that you drink. From
Is that the thing that
from a
zones
gourd
you
with
out?
It just
It takes the edge off.
yeah, it takes the edge off things.
That's so brilliant. I think I need to know about that. What's your most unexpected travel experience?
This was also in South America, and it's a place called Bananal, which is the largest fluvial island within a river in the world, and it's in the middle of the Araguaia River. And I was writing a play called Savages about the way the Brazilian Indians had been treated in the 60s. And so I knew there was a reservation there. And first of all, we had an offer to go there with a Brazilian writer friend. And then I was told that he might get into trouble. It was a very repressive military dictatorship at that point. This was 1972. So we went on a commercial flight, and you got out of the plane, and we were the only two who got out, and then the plane disappeared, and we were in the middle of nowhere.
Gosh,
literally. And there was one person in the airport, and I said, "Where's the Indian reservation?" And he sort of waved an arm, and so we marched off into the blue. But and it was quite a scary couple of days, because we got arrested.
Oh no! Why? What were you doing?
Nothing. Well,
Just being there.
The army had a patrol came by and was very suspicious about these two tourists. And I said, "We're tourists, and I'm taking pictures." And they were very, very suspicious. And in fact, insisted that we left the island, put us on a boat, and were then taken across the river
To the jail?
to a place called Sao Felix, which was not unlike a jail, but
Gosh,
it was. And the most frightening thing of all was at 11 o'clock there was a knock on the door, and the general who was in charge of turned up at the door, and I think he was very interested in my wife, and it was a really scary half hour or so, until a couple of people from the Indian Foundation, who we contacted before we got arrested, came, I think, to check up on that everything was all right, and
they saved you.
And saved us. And the next morning, we had to walk around the little tiny town and find someone who would agree to take us back to the island, because that's where the plane was coming back. And he landed us right in the middle of the reservation.
Oh my goodness!
So I was able to do what I'd come to do, which was talk to a lot of people.
And did that inspire you? Did that help you?
It did. And then we just made it back for the plane, and were alarmed to see that the general
Was on the plane.
booked himself a seat across the aisle, and he'd followed us back to Brasilia and checked in behind us at the Hotel Nacional. So we got the hell out of Brasilia as soon
Quickly
as we
as you
possibly
could.
But it was a very, it was kind of an unscheduled series of events, which, in retrospect, was probably quite rash.
Quite rash, but also an amazing memory
Yes.
for you. How did the play do?
Played it very well. Paul Schofield was in it. It was at the Royal Court, and then it was in the
wonderful.
West End. And I think it did raise people's consciousness a little bit. When they did it in America, in the program of the first production in America, they listed all the companies that were investing in the Amazon and therefore causing the destruction of the Indians, and invited the audiences to disinvest. And in fact, at the Royal Court, we had a complaint from the Brazilian embassy complained to the Foreign Office, and the Foreign Office complained to the Arts Council, and the Arts Council said no more of these provocative plays about our allies.
Oh, did they? You were at the Royal Court for a long time, though, weren't you?
Yeah, about 10 years on and off, yes.
Yeah, I love the Royal Court. It's wonderful. My son was at Garden House School, and that's where they put their plays on. So he did Toad of Toad Hall there, which was hopefully not his only claim to fame. Let's go on to the next travel secret, which is, what's your most overrated or even underrated travel experience?
Well, I think something that is underrated is the pleasure of going to the same place over and over again. I mean, seasoned travellers like to go somewhere different, but all through my children's, between the ages of about 10 and 16, we used to go every year to this hotel in Elounda in Crete.
Oh, lovely. Was that the Elounda Beach Hotel?
It was,
yeah.
And we used to spend a couple of weeks there every summer. And something about going back to somewhere you know so well. My daughter, there was every morning at about 8 o'clock, this large man would arrive to our villa and shout "breakfast" outside the door, and my daughter still does this to encourage her dog to come to breakfast. She shouts "breakfast," and those sorts of memories you accumulate. And Crete has really been very important in our lives, because my brother, when he retired, he was an accountant. When he retired, he actually built a house in Crete. So we continued going back to stay there near Aios Nikolaos, in his house after the era of the hotel had finished.
Do you go to Crete, or is there anywhere else that you go where you actually write, or can you write anywhere?
I used to. I've now got a house in the country, which is really absolutely the best place to go and write a script. But in the old days, in order to escape the distractions of London, when I was about halfway through a script, I would go to a foreign hotel, either in Paris or Amsterdam or Sienna, or there was a sort of series of them. And the thing about that was that you didn't tell anyone where you were going, you didn't leave any numbers, and the hotel was extremely expensive, so it really spurred you to get your script finished.
Written.
And so as to be able to check out of the hotel.
Which hotels did you used to stay in?
There was a marvellous hotel, I can't remember its name, near Sienna, which had been about 2 miles outside of Sienna, which had been a monastery.
Oh, I know exactly, the one on the hill.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it's called either. It was beautiful,
gorgeous, and Italy has always been my favourite country. But then several hotels in Paris that when we made the film of Dangerous Liaison, we all stayed at a hotel called the Hotel de la Trémoille.
Oh yes.
So I often would go back there, and still do sometimes.
Is that near Versailles?
No, it's actually on the Rue de la Trémoille, which is just in behind
the Georges V.
The Georges V, yeah.
But obviously, did you do filming in Versailles for?
No, we didn't actually. We filmed in a very noisy room within walking distance of the tramway in a building called France Amérique.
Oh, I don't know.
Which was a kind of friendship arrangement of the 19th century or something, and then this huge building with these vast rooms, all with sort of 18th century decoration. The only trouble was that we had a genius sound man called Peter Hanford. I don't know how he did it, because there was thunderous traffic.
Absolutely, and
all the way through,
and
all the way through all those scenes, and he somehow managed to get it off.
That was such an amazing film. I fell in love with John Malkovich, but also with Michelle Pfeiffer. I hadn't really seen her in many things before that.
No, she was Stephen Frears', because we auditioned just about everybody you can think of.
Did you?
And eventually we went to Los Angeles and auditioned several people. We'd done most of the auditions in New York, but then we went to Los Angeles, and Michelle came in, and she was in the middle of shooting a film called Tequila Sunrise, and she was tired and not very happy on the film, and it wasn't a great audition.
Oh, really interesting.
And when she'd gone, Stephen said, "I think she's the one." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, I think she's the one." And his instinct is fantastic. And then we discovered that she'd been offered a part she'd been offered the Glenn Close part in the other liaison film,
Oh, really?
which is called Valmont, which Milos Forman was preparing at the same time.
Really?
So for quite a few weeks, she was driving around with both scripts in her, trying to decide which film.
Well, I'm so glad she did. And she was mesmerising in it. She really
she
was.
Yeah.
So she obviously was tired during the audition because she totally came alive during the film. She was just wonderful.
Yes. She was magnificent. And we worked with her again in a film called Cherie, 20 years later.
Oh, I don't know, Cherie. What's that about?
Cherie is a novel by Colette about sort of about to retire courtesan.
Oh, okay.
Who's having a tremendous affair with a much younger man. And it's a beautifully written book, and she rather tragically decides that it's time for him to move on. So she sacrifices this love affair. And of course he's ruined. He never finds anyone Cherie, he never finds anyone who's matches up to her.
So did you translate and adapt that?
There were two quite short novels. One's called Cherie and the other's called La Fin de Cherie. And most of the film was adapted from the first novel, but we added the ending from the second novel.
Oh, I shall look that out.
And it's a very beautiful looking film, which we shot in France and Germany.
So you said Italy is one of your favourite places, but it sounds like you do quite a lot in France too. But you still prefer Italy, do you?
Well, I love France, and I go there more than any other country because I work there quite a lot. Actually, I've done 2 or 3 films with French directors, and I know Paris very well. And Paris was the first sort of exciting place I went to when I was 16 or something, and able to get on the train and go across the Channel.
And you conversed because you speak 5 languages.
Well, I could speak French, and because of being in Egypt, in Alexandria, where all the kids at the school I was at spoke 5 languages.
I know, I read that about you. So you speak 5 languages?
No, I speak French and German up to a point, and English. That's it.
A little bit of Arabic, maybe?
No, I've forgotten it all. It's very sad. I was in Doha last year, and I couldn't really work out what anyone was saying. And I used to be able to. I certainly understood it when I was.
But
a
I
child.
think if you were a child and left when you were 10, that's probably a long time ago.
Yeah, it's
isn't
gone.
It? So, let's talk about food and drink. We all love food. We all love drink. Where's the best meal that you've ever had, or what sort of food do you like when you travel or drink? Or let's just talk about food and drink.
I don't know whether this is gastronomically extraordinary, but the place I really loved going to was the Locando Ciprianni on Torcello. And Torcello is the first island of all that little clump of islands around Venice, and was the original place that was settled there. So the church is like 12th or 13th century, I think, and there's really no one left on the island, except there's this little Locando Ciprianni, which is also a small hotel, I think, and may or may not have something to do with the famous Cipriani, which is on the other side of Venice, which figures heavily in the film festival and everything. But anyway, what you do is you get it takes you an hour and a half to go on the ferry, and then you wander around the church a bit, and then you go, and there's this fantastic meal. So it's nothing out of the ordinary. It's prosciutto Malone and
Pasta.
pasta al pesto, or
Perfect.
with vongole, or marvelous risotto. I seem to remember they made seafood risotto, and you take as long over the meal as you possibly can, and then get on the 4 o'clock ferry and go back, and it's a perfect day.
I completely agree with you. I love Venice, but that is actually my favourite restaurant in Venice. I think it's absolutely wonderful. Apparently, it closed down last year, and it's reopening
Good.
with a new owner because it was in the family, whichever bit of the Ciprianni family, I don't know. But it is reopening, and I was so devastated to hear that it had closed down because it's just amazing. The garden is superb.
Yes.
And you sit outside, it's just so beautiful. Really,
Yes,
really
but there
lovely.
are several places like that around Italy, and actually in the south of France as well, where I think eating outside is always delightful.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely lovely.
And, on the whole, I prefer lunch to dinner.
And I talk about this place all the time in my podcast. My husband goes mad because it's his secret place, but it's not secret. It's the Colombe d'Or in Saint Paul de Vence, which is the same.
Yes, I've never been there.
It's the most lovely terrace, and it's very similar to Locando Cipriani. We're actually doing the opening of a new hotel in Venice next year, which is owned by Les Arel, which is a hotel group, and it's right next to the Cipriani on the Giudecca side.
Yes.
And the garden is bigger than the Cipriani's garden.
Wow.
So it's going to be amazing. So I must send you there. If you like Italy, you will absolutely love it.
Yes, I'm due another trip to Venice. I haven't been. I've sort of started to avoid the film festival because...
Well, it's crazy during the film festival.
And and I had a bad experience there as well with the film. So that sort of turns you off.
Well, we won't send you during the camp with the Venice Film
No,
Festival.
you can send me to Cannes. I've always had very good time.
Have
there.
you? Oh, that's hilarious. And the other hotel which you must go to in Italy, which opened last year and won Best Hotel in the World last year, is a hotel on Lake Como called Passalacqua. It is absolutely the most exquisite hotel that you will ever see.
And where is it?
So the owner owns a hotel called Tramezzo, and it's opposite Bellagio, basically. It's on Lake Como.
So it's not in there's a little village called Varenna.
No, it's not in Varenna. I don't know the village name.
Because I seem to remember happening upon a little hidden down by the lake hotel in this place, this small town called Varenna. And I thought this, next time I come abroad to write a script, I'm coming here. But in fact, I bought my place in the country, so the excuse had gone. I've never been back. But I do know the Hotel Cerboloni in Bellagio, and we did spend a couple of holidays there when the children were a little older.
Well, it's such a lovely place, and honestly, the Passalacqua is really well deserving of the best hotel in the world because it's beautiful, but it's not too over the top, and the owner is superb. So you have a wonderful host. I know you would really love it. So that will be the next place I send you.
Okay, I'll make a note of that before I go.
Yes, I shall send you that. Absolutely. So let's talk about memories that are still poignant to you now. Where have you been that's still very poignant?
Well, about 5 years ago, I made a TV series called The Singapore Grip, which we shot in Malaysia. And one of the weekends off, a group of us from the crew went to a place called Kuching on Borneo, and very close to Kuching is a sort of orangutan sanctuary.
Oh, wonderful!
And it's very. You go there sort of early in the morning, and they say, look, they may come or they may not come, because they're free. They're free in the jungle. They roam around. There are not that many of them, and they're very threatened species. But if you're lucky, you go and stand on a sort of observation platform, and if you're lucky, they turn up.
And were you?
Yes, and first of all, the enormous alpha male appears and.
That's quite scary.
And sits up the tree and looks at you in a contemplative way, and his wives bring him fruit and stuff.
King Louis.
And then he mooches off, and then everyone else is allowed to enjoy themselves. But they were I've never forgotten. They're so tragic that their eyes are so sad. Mm. And if we were very lucky, and they kind of came right over to us, and you're not allowed to feed them or anything, but they came as it were, communicated with us. The younger ones, you can see how intelligent they are.
And do you think they're sad because they're not completely free, or
No, I think they're sad. No,
as a species?
I think they're sad because the species is so threatened, and it's so close to us, really, and they're so sort of gentle and harmless, and so it's just awful to think that there are so few of them left in the world. And when they're in the wild, they have all these, there are all these risks and going on of logging and areas of jungle being fired and turned into palm oil plantations and all that kind of thing. And so this particular place, where it's literally, it's a sanctuary in the sense that the orangutans know that they can go there if they feel like eating something, or and they're naturally curious. But in fact, they're in the jungle, so they're completely free.
They're free, amazing.
So they only come when they want to, which is why you're issued with this enormous warning at the beginning, saying you may not see anything at all.
And do not touch. You haven't ever been to Rwanda or anywhere like that to see the gorillas, have you?
No, I haven't.
I think that would be really lovely.
Yes, I'd love to do that, and I also have never been on one of those safari holidays. I was trying to fix one up quite a long time ago, and it sort of fell through because I had to do something else, and I've never gone back and done that. And that's on my list of things
on your bucket
to do.
list. Well, we also look after an amazing hotel in Johannesburg called the Saxon Hotel, which is where Nelson Mandela wrote The Long Walk to Freedom. And he had a reserve in a safari camp, in the bush. And they are opening it next year, called Zulu Camp.
Wow.
And it's called Shambhala. It used to be Nelson Mandela's home, and it's going to be a private game reserve where you have your own ranger, but they do have the big five there. So if you're interested, I'm sure they'd love to have you.
Yes, I am. I've never been to South Africa. To start with, there was a long period of time when playwrights didn't allow their plays to be done in South Africa because of the discrimination and the segregated audiences and so on. But all that's over now, and I know East Africa a bit, and I know North Africa, but I've never been to the West or the South.
Yeah, well, I shall send you to South Africa, and you must go to when Shambhala opens. I'm sure they would love to have you and your family. So that will be
great.
Next place I send you, Italy and South Africa. Marvellous. Can we just talk about LA a little bit? Because obviously Sunset Boulevard, we were talking at the beginning about it, is you were very much instrumental in bringing that to happen, weren't you?
Yes, it was sort of my idea. Andrew kindly invited me to write The Phantom of the Opera, and like an idiot, I turned it down and counter-proposed Sunset Boulevard, which I'd always thought would make a marvellous opera or musical. I was, and I knew Billy Wilder a bit.
Oh, did you? How amazing!
And indeed, I'm planning a film with Stephen Frears about Billy Wilder, which we hope to shoot next year. But yes, I'd met him a couple of times, and he was very kind to me when I was first in Los Angeles, which, by the way, is a city about which I'm extremely ambivalent.
Are you?
Let's
Interesting.
say that, of course, it's fun to go there. There was a marvellous writer called Kurt Ludke, who I think wrote Out of Africa, screenwriter, who lived in Chicago. And he said when he went to LA, he always took 2 packets of cigarettes, and when they were finished, he left.
I hope he wasn't too much of a chain smoker. 1 day, 2 days, out of there.
And I can sort of understand that. So it's kind of, I did think at one point in the early 80s of moving my family out there, and a lot of my friends and acquaintances who were screenwriters had gone to live there, and I thought that might be the thing to do. But we only lasted. We had an extremely dinky little house on Mulholland Drive with a pool no larger than a soup plate, but we only lasted about 3 months. My children were at the Beverly Hills Montessori. They were very sorry to leave.
But you were probably very pleased that they did and took them back to the UK.
Yeah, I think my younger daughter was 4 when we got there, and after a few days in LA, she said to me, "Daddy, America is for children, isn't it?"
She's probably right. They're all children, everyone that lives there. Oh, how funny.
Anyway, because it's of its peculiar status as a kind of industry town, and the fact that everybody's so nervous all the time, and all this, nobody's staying up past 10 o'clock, and everyone drinking Perrier and
driving everywhere.
It wasn't really. Yeah, I especially learned to drive and everything. I quite enjoyed driving around Los Angeles, and as I say, I like to visit, but really, it's not my favorite city.
No. So finally, I asked you to bring a photograph that sums up travel to you, and if you could show us the photograph and just talk about it, that would be marvelous.
I found a couple of things. One was the Orangutan Sanctuary.
Wonderful.
Actually. And the other was a place that I discovered quite recently, 2 or 3 years ago, which is called the Château de Clos-Lucé.
Where is that?
Amboise, and which is where Leonardo da Vinci wound up and where he died.
Really?
The King of France gave him being a man of taste, gave him a carte blanche and a castle.
How very
at the end of his life. And this place has been turned by it's been in the same family since I think the 18th century, and they've turned it into an extraordinary kind of study place for Leonardo da Vinci students from Asia and Africa and all over the world, and there is an absolutely marvelous museum where they've recreated all the machines that Leonardo invented or was, trying to invent. And you can spend the whole day there without any, and go back the next day. And it's exactly the sort of place you would quite like to end your days. So I think Leonardo
he did well.
Landed on his feet. And so I took a photograph of that one. I don't take many photographs when I'm away, but I took a photograph of that.
Well, that would be lovely if you could share that photograph with us. And that story is fantastic and sort of sums up your travel tales, because you're so interesting and you go to such wonderful places, and your writing and everything is obviously very much comes out of all of those things, and the peace that you find probably in those sort of places as well. What's next, and where are you going next?
Well, I've been going around Europe much more in the last few years, not going quite so far afield. And there are lots of places I don't know in Europe. Also, next year I'm working with a French director and a Polish director. And the film that Stephen Frears and I want to do about Billy Wilder is set in Greece.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, because it's about the filming of his last but one film, which was shot largely in Greece.
Which film was that?
It was called Fedora. So the plan is to shoot it in Athens. So I guess those places, plus Scandinavia, I don't really know at all. I would love to explore that a bit. I've never been to Norway. And I don't know Sweden very much.
And it's lovely, Scandinavia. And actually a very good way to do Norway is to do the fjords and to actually go on a very small boat.
Yes.
Not a big cruise ship, but actually a small boat that can go into those areas that nobody else can go to.
Sounds great.
Yeah, I'll send you a link to the best one of that.
Okay, all right.
Well, good luck with the film.
Thank you.
Good luck with the Tony, hopefully, for Sunset Boulevard once it comes out. I'm going in November, actually, because I'm on the board of RADA and we're doing King Lear. Ken Branagh's doing King Lear at the Shed. So I'm going in November. So will Sunset be open by then?
Yeah, it opens, actually it opens at the end of this month for previews. They have weeks and weeks of previews. And then it opens officially on the 20th of October. And it's on for 9 months. So.
Oh, wonderful. So I shall go and see it over there. And it's the same cast?
The same cast. Well, all
the four principals.
The four principals and then an American supporting cast. And it's going to be at this St. James's Theatre, which is where the producers played for so many years.
That was so brilliant, so fantastic.
So it's a beautiful, beautiful theatre. So
well, the very best of luck with all of that. And I look forward to sending you to South Africa and Italy, if not many more places. Christopher, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a joy and a delight.
Thanks very much. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.